What's up, fish friends? Hope you're doing well. In today's video, I'm going to cover all aspects of keeping and breeding the Taiwan bee shrimp, Caridina cantonensis. Most of the footage you'll see is from my blue bolt shrimp tank, but care for all other varieties is pretty much the same. They're a super fun species of dwarf shrimp that come in a wide variety of colors and patterns that you don't find in the more commonly available cherry shrimp. They're also a little bit more challenging to keep than cherries, but only by a bit. Native habitat. Taiwan bee shrimp, or Caridina cantonensis, are native to, you guessed it, Taiwan, as well as many parts of southern China. They live in shallow, tropical to subtropical headwaters laden with excessive amounts of fallen leaves. These tributaries are largely supplied by rainwater, resulting in extremely low mineral content, which is an important component of keeping them. I'll leave an article in the description if you're interested in learning more about native habitat of this shrimp, as well as a lot of other similar critters that they share habitat with. This was a really fun read, and I'd recommend you check it out. Appearance and color morphs. Just like the popular and easy to care for cherry shrimp, there are many domesticated varieties of the Taiwan bee shrimp. Some of the most popular ones are crystal reds and blacks. In the wild, most specimens are clear to striped that fall under the tiger, bee, or crystal varieties. They all have the same fairly standard freshwater shrimp body shape. They max out at about 1.5 inches or 3 3/4 centimeters, with the females being slightly larger than the males and having proportionally larger abdomens to accommodate eggs. Their lifespan is about 18 months or 1.5 years. Most captive bred or domesticated varieties originate from either tigers or crystal blacks. Wild tiger shrimp are striped, with captive bred varieties exhibiting anywhere between fine striping to almost full deep black to blue or rusty red coloration. Crystal black shrimp are also striped, but with larger blocks of black and white. Captive bred varieties have colors ranging from anywhere from completely white, crystal whites, to completely red. Extreme or super reds they're called. Blue bolts, the variety that I keep, are one of the most removed from the wild types. They're an uncommon mutation that appears when crossing crystals and bees. Even though I've read that breeding blue bolts will result in a variety of different offspring, from ones that resemble the parents to white and black striped varieties. However, I've only seen blue bolt babies coming from the parents. The diversity in domesticated Taiwan bee shrimp is pretty astounding, and the amount of hidden genetic diversity and mutations that exists within a species like this is pretty fun to think about. In the wild, these crazy bright colors would result in them getting spotted by predators and then being eaten, so these lines were never able to exist in the wild. By selectively breeding those non-wild or domesticated qualities, rapid evolution takes place and extreme variations start to show up, like all these super wild colors and patterns. It's the same concept with dogs, at least for domesticated ones, how they're one species but they've been bred to have so many extremes, like a teacup poodle and Saint Bernard, for example. Not sure how these two would have puppies, but genetically it should be possible. I'll get into water parameters in a little more detail in the next section, but it's generally accepted that Caridina cantonensis is a difficult shrimp to keep, at least for freshwater standards and in comparison to cherry shrimp. The further you travel from the wild varieties up top, the more difficult they are to care for, with white King Kong and blue bolt shrimp being some of the more sensitive varieties. The downside to domesticating a species and selecting for physical appearance so strongly is that there can be unintended health consequences To draw the dog comparison again, it tends to be dogs with crazy physical features that are most predisposed to health issues, like dogs with short snouts not being able to breathe, or even some breeds with really big heads that need C-sections to give birth. Fortunately, the domesticated varieties of the bee shrimp that we find are still pretty robust. Just keep in mind that the ones up here are more hardy and the one down here are less hardy. Meaning that the further you stray from the water parameters, the more likely they are to croak. Water parameters. You'll need to have water parameters dialed in pretty well if you want to keep Taiwan bee shrimp, even more so if you plan to breed them. This is what you should be shooting for. pH 6 to 7.5, though they definitely prefer the more acidic end, which is beneficial for breeding. GH 4 to 6 degrees, KH 0 to 1 degree, ammonia 0, nitrites 0, nitrates 5. Temperature 65 to 75 Fahrenheit or 18 to 24 Celsius. Flow low to moderate. One of the trickiest things to pull off is the low KH and GH. If your tap water is high in those areas, you'll need to use RO water and then mineralize it to get the GH back up to around 5. I assume that most people watching fall under that category. However, if you're like me and fortunate enough to live somewhere with really soft tap water, you can just mineralize that. I use Seachem Equilibrium to boost my tap water's mineral content. Otherwise, just keep the water clean. Any signs of ammonia or nitrites will spell trouble for these little guys. Nitrates will need to be kept low, though trace amounts are acceptable. I generally recommend people keep shrimp on the cooler end of their preferred spectrum because it increases their lifespan a little bit. I've also heard that it helps to keep them healthier and results in bigger shrimp, though I'm not 100% sure if that's true. I do not recommend keeping them in high-tech planted tanks, even in tanks with nitrogen limitation. CO2 usage results in pH swings, and that can be lethal for the bee shrimp. In addition, heavy fertilizer usage can impact mineral content as well as nitrates. Diet. As far as the Taiwan bee shrimp diet goes, it's pretty standard shrimp business. They should get a variety of foods, but from everything I've seen, they really just like to forage around the tank, especially on leaves. Even though it's just a theory, I wonder if leaves are important for providing the calcium and magnesium that's normally associated with, that's normally found in the water. In the article that looked at natural habitats, fallen leaves were always found in great abundance along with the bee shrimp. Another pro to adding leaves in your tank is that it will help lower the pH through releasing tannic acids or tannins. One more advantage is that adding leaves helps with biofilm, and that's a great food source for the shrimp, especially for the newborn ones. Maybe this is really the only thing that they're interested in, leaves after all. I'm not really sure. Either way, leaves are great for their diet. Blanched veggies like zucchini, broccoli, and peas are also a great addition, as well as any extra scraps of fish food like flakes or spirulina wafers. They also really enjoy eating any live grindleworms that make their way to the bottom of the tank. Last but not least, Seachem Equilibrium. Even though it's not technically a food, my blue bolts love eating it, so I make sure to not completely mix it in when I'm doing water changes. That way they can munch on a few minerals during the process. Setup. There are a couple things that you can do while setting up a tank for Taiwan bee shrimp to help reach the water parameters previously mentioned. First of all, use inert stones. Limestone or coral rubble will release minerals into the water and quickly exceed the shrimp's threshold for GH and KH. Granite and river stones are my go-tos for inert ones. Even if you only use a bit in some mesh bags like I have here under the sand, aquarium plant soil like the little round pellet types reduce pH and KH for up to a year before they start to lose that buffering capacity. Live plants, wood, and leaves are always a great addition to any shrimp tank. Plants help to keep water quality in check while leaves and wood lower pH and provide plenty of biofilm to graze on. Tank mates. The general rule of thumb is if it fits in a fish's mouth, it's gonna get eaten. And these are some pretty small shrimp, so pick tank mates with caution. Minnow fish are a great idea, like smaller tetras, rasboras, danios. You can also mix them with other peaceful dwarf shrimp like cherries, ghosts, and amanos. Though you'll be keeping the other shrimp on the lower end of the spectrum with regards to GH and KH. In a small tank like this 9-gallon, I went with chili rasboras. I haven't seen it happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they pick away some of the newborn shrimplets, but there's also a fair number of them surviving. Going with Danios would not be a good choice in a small tank. You'll need to consider the size of your tank and the amount of hiding spots when deciding what fish or other shrimp to put in with them. The larger the tank, the more hiding spots, and the more boisterous fish you can mix in. In smaller tanks, it's best to stick with smaller, more docile fish. Water changes. It's generally recommended to do small water changes like 10 to 20% with Caridina cantonensis in order to keep things stable. Large water changes like 50%ers can result in sudden changes to water parameters that shock their little bodies and can end up in mortalities. When I do water changes, I refill my tank very slowly using my faucet adapter. You could also pour water in from a bucket very, very slowly, but that gets kind of tiring holding it up there. One advantage to using a bucket though is that you can mix in minerals before adding it back to the tank, leading to more stable conditions throughout the process. I mix minerals in a little container of water and slowly pour it in while water is filling the tank from my faucet. Water changes can sometimes encourage shrimp to molt. That's when shrimp shed their entire exoskeleton, which looks exactly like they do, so don't confuse them for the dead. The only difference is that the exos don't have any color on them. It's a good thing when shrimp molt because that means that they're growing. So make sure to leave the exoskeletons in the tank because they got all those good minerals that they can end up eating to help strengthen their new exoskeletons. Breeding. If all goes well, you'll end up with some little bee shrimp babies of your own. In order to set the mood for mom and dad, you'll need to cover everything that I've mentioned so far. Being spot on with water parameters is really important. While doing a water change, you can drop the temperature ever so slightly to simulate a large spring storm that can sometimes trigger breeding. The breeding process starts with the female releasing some love hormones in the water, which gets the males going all crazy. If you ever noticed your shrimp swimming around all frantically like they're on a mission or something, now you know what that mission is. After copulation, the female will store fertilized eggs on the underside of her abdomen on the little swimmerets, which are constantly fanned and waved around to keep the eggs well oxygenated as well as clean. Stagnant water always breeds problems, so keeping flowing water over the eggs helps increase their survival, which she does by fanning her swimmerets and constantly grooming them. After eggs become visible, it should be a little over a month before you start seeing baby shrimp in the tank. They are extremely small and easy to miss, especially if they've been given adequate hiding spots. They come out looking exactly like their parents, meaning they don't have a larval life cycle. Make sure that they get plenty of food or have access to plenty of biofilm during the early stages of their life. If you really want to breed as many shrimp as possible, then having a carpeting plant or chunks of moss is a great way to do that. Now that I'm mentioning it, I'm wondering why I don't have any moss in this tank. I'll definitely go get some today, but the idea is that it creates a lot of hiding spots and foraging areas for baby shrimp. It will drastically increase the survival rate of offspring, giving them a little microcosm to grow up in and then emerge when they're large enough to not get eaten. And with that, I'm going to call it. Let me know if you have any questions. Maybe I missed something you're curious about. Please hit that like and sub button if you enjoyed today's content. I appreciate it. Until next time, see ya.